We're joined now by our Senior Counsel for Global Affairs, former Secretary of State and CIA Director Mike Pompeo. And Secretary Pompeo, I want to go to you first because I haven't had an opportunity to ask you yet directly on the broadcast. Your reaction to the Durham Report.
Boy, it's heartbreaking to see that our government, our FBI, behaved in a way that is so deeply inconsistent with their integrity, their ethics, the basic norms of American law. We now know that a Hillary Clinton launched effort was a true Russia hoax. I lived this, Jordan. I lived the Russia hoax for 2.5 years of my time in the Trump administration, where we were under attack, that President Trump and those around him were Putin puppets. And it turns out, and we've known this for a while, Durham simply confirmed this. It turns out that they were the ones that were putting a hoax on the American people, that were attempting to propagate a storyline that they knew not to be true. And Secretary Clinton, Congressman Schiff, and Andy McCabe, Jim Comey, all of those that were involved in this need to be held accountable. There has to be a mechanism by which people who misled the American people at an incredibly important time in American history can't get away with precisely what it is we now know they did with absolute certainty.
I want to actually get to that because that's something our listeners, as you can tell, that they get frustrated. Our supporters and a lot of supporters of your work as Secretary of State and the Trump administration, and they get frustrated not because we get the facts and we know the truth, but that the accountability, instead of getting gigs on MSNBC and being treated as heroes, it doesn't feel like, again, these agents who created this narrative can be held accountable. There's a difficult time. I'm interested to see Secretary Pompeo Durham's testimony, because I have an inclination, it's like, unless you go after process crimes, we might not have the right laws on the books, because we might not have thought this was a serious enough issue in the United States that we needed specific legislation on the FBI meddling in U.S. elections. So I think it's actually something Congress, in their oversight role and legislative role, and you're a member of Congress as well, can look at, is whether or not, if Durham testified, said, one of the issues we faced is that we don't have the right laws on the books.
Two thoughts come to mind. Well, first of all, that may well be, and there may be things we can do. The FBI's response was, don't worry, we've already fixed all this. That's just crazy. That's not true. Because in the end, this fix is about leadership. This fix is about the director of the FBI and the attorney general, appointed by presidents of the United States, holding these bad actors accountable. Andy McCabe, for goodness sakes, we know he lied. We know he lied under oath, and we know he got his pension back. I mean, this is crazy. And he's now got a gig on TV, and he comes out and says, oh, Durham didn't learn anything. No, we learned an awful lot about what all of these characters, Peter Strzok, we know exactly what they were doing. These were Trump haters. They didn't like what we were working on, and they were trying to undermine our effort to both for President Trump to get elected initially, and then this continues. I was January 6th, 2017. I was sitting with Comey, Brennan, and Clapper when they briefed President Trump at Trump Tower and essentially told him that he was a Russian asset, and we knew it wasn't true. They have to be held accountable. In the end, I'm counting on the American people and voters to get this right. Our founders knew this too. You can't create a law for everything, but the senior leadership at the FBI doesn't possess the very integrity, the very ethics that are at the heart of American law enforcement and American justice. And for that, the senior leaders need to be held accountable.
That's where it seems to be the problem. I think you're right. You can't. I mean, that's part of America, because we don't just create a law for everything. We're not trying to create a police state in that sense. And that we ultimately, as voters, can hold these individuals accountable. They are appointed by the presidents that we elect. They are confirmed by the senators that we elect. So we have a huge say in how that process works. It does seem to, I mean, at your time as Secretary of State and CIA Director, overseeing very important, huge government agencies, when you look at this, it does seem like it's the leadership problem. It doesn't seem like it's the problem down with most staff. There's always bad apples in huge organizations, but that it's this leadership issue that has gotten obsessed with putting politics ahead of everything. And really partisan politics, not just implementing the policies of the president who's in charge. That's okay. But we're talking about implementing programs and deception campaigns to impact politics in America.
Jordan, I must say, when I read the Durham Report, and I've now read all 300 plus pages of it, it brought back memories from my time, mostly at the State Department, where you did have big bureaucracies that were intent on working against the mission of the President of the United States. That is abhorrent to our founders' idea of how the Constitution should work. I'll say this for conservatives, for those of us who try to find the sunny side in everything and always just assume good faith, we now know that good faith in the leadership of these institutions is not something that they have earned. And so the next president of the United States, when he takes over or she takes over, has got to do some enormous ripping and tearing at these institutions. We cannot count on the fact that these folks are actors trying to get it right. These are political partisans. We saw that in the Durham Report in spades. He alludes to it. I'm surprised he didn't attempt to prosecute for some of this. He talks about the fact that these were partisan actors knowingly taking information from a political campaign and then flipping it on its head and working really hard to take down President Trump and not going after real risks that Director Brennan had to brief to Barack Obama. He saw what the Clinton campaign was doing and he said, oh my gosh, we have intelligence that tells us that the Clinton campaign is trying to tell a story that is false. He felt like he had to go brief it to the President of the United States, and yet the Justice Department and the FBI did nothing to stop this. It is so outrageous. You could tell it gets my blood boiling. This is so dangerous to our democracy. If you compare what happened in this incident to the hoodlums that rioted in January 6th at the Capitol, this is deeper. This is longer term. This presents a greater risk to our republic than even the day that CNN and MSNBC wants to tell you that was so horrific on January 6th of 2021.
It's interesting you say that because today there's a hearing by Congressman Jordan in his subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government. He's got these FBI whistleblowers who have come forward. And most of the hearing, the Democrats were trying to attack the FBI agents who are given this whistleblower status by Congress, that's who grants it, and who have come out and said they were talking about the domestic violent extremism issue. And one of those whistleblowers was the one who said, it was the way they decided to go out against policy. And they told us to, instead of treating it as one event on January 6th, we're going to treat it all locally, so all by different towns and cities, and then we'll map it out all over the country and tell everybody this is the number one problem in America. Not fentanyl, not a porous border, not organized crime and the cartels killing Americans with fentanyl. It's the number one killer of Americans between the ages of 18 and 45. But that the real issue with the country is domestic violent extremism. So he had an issue with that. And the way the Democrats tried to rip them apart at this hearing today, to me, it's bizarre to see kind of the Democrat Party be the party of big law enforcement, I guess federal law enforcement. They want to defund our local police, but keep funding the politicized police in Washington.
Jordan, I haven't had a chance to see those hearings, but we've heard this same narrative before over and over again about, we have to rein in the local law enforcement officers. Frankly, the men and women who are out on the street every day, actually delivering security and safety for the American people in both big cities and smaller places, rural places like my home state of Kansas. These are the warriors to keep us safe. And yet these bureaucrats, these federal officials who do white collar stuff and are focused singularly on these national things, watch this horrific activity by former Secretary Clinton, where they knew she was actively trying to undermine this election by foisting a false narrative that with the Steele dossier, completely unverified, and they rip into an investigation, destroying the reputations of people who were wholly innocent, and even today have the national media covering up for them, saying, gosh, Durham didn't find a thing. No, he found an enormous, egregious violation of the decency of America and American law enforcement. And for that, the people, Director McCabe and Comey and Brennan and Clapper, remember, they were also the ones that told the story about Hunter Biden's laptop as well. It is the same cast of characters who have used the mask of intelligence and law enforcement to try and protect them, and they're now making a living off of the fact that they undermined our elections in ways that are fundamentally indecent.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely right. Secretary Pompeo, as always, we appreciate your insight, and we appreciate you being part of our team at the ACLJ.